Well, good day, viewers. Today we have a 2019 Nissan Rogue. It's in here for some brake repairs. I've got all the wheels off of it. The front brakes still have about 40 to 50% remaining. There's some rust on the edge of the rotor, but it's concentric, so we're not gonna worry about that. But the rear brakes are done. It's steel on the left rear. Now this has electric parking brake actuators. So we have to put the brake caliper into service mode in order to retract the caliper pistons. Boy, this brake pad hasn't been doing much. I wonder if the caliper pins are seized. Although if it was seized, it would be wearing the inboard brake pad, and the inboard brake pad looks good on this side. That's a 3-year-old vehicle, and the inboard brake pad looks good. It's the outboard pad that's worn, steel to steel. Well, let's put the scanner on it and put it in service mode. So I've got the interface connected in the vehicle using the Snap-on Verus Edge here to scan this thing. And Nissan. Automatic ID. Key is on, engine's not running. 48,000 kilometers already. Mind you, the car sits a while, rust takes over in Northern Ontario. Nissans are slow to do a network scan. Let's do a network code scan just to see if there's any other underlying conditions. He's not complaining about anything else. I didn't see any warning lights on when I drove it in, just the brakes. And again, Nissans are slow to do a network scan on, so I'll pick up when we get to the end of this scan. So we're at 13 modules so far, and we picked up a code in the sonar system. Corner sensor, left rear, right rear. They're all history codes. They might have been dirty or blocked, or they could have been covered with snow at a previous time. Let's see how far along this. We're at 16 modules and roughly 60% of the way, 17 modules. So to analyze 25 controllers, picked up some history codes in the sonar module and one history code in the laser radar module. Everything else is green and clean. So I'm not going to do a network code clear. I'm just going to go into the particular module and clear the codes. Because doing a network code clear will reset the maintenance monitors in the engine control module, and I don't really want to do that. But I did comment, Nissans are slow. And a network code clear will take about 3 or 4 minutes, which seems like 15 when you're standing here watching it. Oh, for crying out loud, come on. This is a manufacturer's way of increasing the billable hours. Key must be on with the engine off, which it is. Let's read the codes one more time to make sure they're gone. And in the laser radar, we'll clear that one too. It was probably blocked by something. Let's read the codes again. Okay, enough of this. So let's see if it has a separate controller for the parking brake. Let's go back out and look at the list of controllers. Or is it part of the anti-lock brakes? Service interval, side wheel alignments, left rear multi. Well, let's try. Oh, electronic parking brake, there it is. Special functions. Start brake pad replacement. This test must be performed prior to the replacement of the rear brake pads. The ignition must be on with the engine off. Ensure that parking brake is off before activating this test. The vehicle ignition must be on until the rear brake pads have been replaced. So what they should say here is, please connect the battery charger so the vehicle battery does not go dead, which I will do. Start. Now you can hear the calipers retracting. Now it may still require physical pushing of the caliper pistons in. I'm not sure. I've never done one of these Nissans yet. This is the first one I'm doing. I'm going to put a battery charger on it. So here's what I'm using as a clean battery charger. I got it in flash programming mode, set it at 13 volts. Otherwise, other modules get their noses out of joint because the battery voltage is above 13 and a half. If you use a conventional charger with the key on, it says, why is the battery voltage so high, and sets fault codes in other modules. So now we're going to proceed with the actual brake job. So now we run into another snafu. I'm looking for parts availability here. Rear brake pads with manually operated parking brake. Rear brake pads with manually operated parking brake. I don't see anything with electronically operated parking brake. Let's try a different supplier. Two, 0, 1, 9. Spell Rogue right. Not sure if it's a sport, but hopefully we'll see what if these guys list the brake pads any differently. Brakes, brake system, rear friction, drums and rotors, brake pad set, brake rotors. Because there's no point taking this apart if I can't source parts today. Manually operated parking brake. Manually operated parking brake. Manually operated parking brakes. With electric parking brakes. With manual parking brakes. Nobody's got the kit, the brake pads for electric parking brake. I'm going to do some research. So it appears even the rotors are different. Takes a 980113 for manually operated parking brakes. Power operated parking brakes. 981814. 981814, or this other world parts number 230009. None of which are stocked locally. Let me try another supplier. So I managed to source brake pads and rotors from one of the 4 common supply shops in town, but I got the caliper off and the boot is compromised inside here. How the hell would that get compromised like that? Which means that caliper piston is going to be exposed to the salt spray. And I can't imagine anybody's going to have this caliper in stock when they didn't have the brake pads and rotors in the most common places. Just wonderful. 2019. So here's the caliper on the right side, and as you can see, the seal is compromised there and there. Same way. Now I checked with the aftermarket. Because this has electric parking brake actuators in it, there's no listing for any of the common suppliers for aftermarket remanufactured calipers. So that means dealer item only. I called the dealer, not in stock, a week away at least, and $900 each. Now you can buy a seal kit for it. That's $125 each. But it's going to go together the way it is for now, and I'm going to discuss this with the customer because we can't get parts anytime soon. The caliper pins are smooth, but I think the problem is the caliper brake pads are rusted into the caliper brackets, preventing them from returning and moving freely. I got this caliper bracket off on this side, and you can see the brake pad is, focus, is worn out completely. This is rusted right in here. Now, I did manage to source the pads and rotors from one of the part suppliers I deal with in town, but only one out of four had them, and the rest were like not available or 5 days away. So I sandblasted the brake caliper brackets. What I noticed on these brake pads is there's no stainless steel abutment clips. So it's steel on steel, steel on cast, so they're gonna rust. That's a poor design, Nissan. And I've given the backing plate a wire brush and a coat of black enamel paint just to try to slow down the rust. Cleaned and serviced these caliper pins. Put silicone brake grease on them. Silicone brake grease on painted surface. We're going to put this back together. So that's the silicone brake grease I use on the brake pads in this surface here and this surface here. Now they do have stainless steel clips on there, but they don't go right around the brake pad. This brake wear sensor goes on the bottom on the driver's side. I imagine it's on the bottom on the passenger side too, so there's a left and right. The caliper piston just pushed straight in like a conventional brake caliper once the electric motor was retracted. I got to check to make sure that the ear is lined up. You see how it has this little pin here? That has to line up with one of the slots in the caliper. So this is what I'm talking about. These little ears have to line up so that caliper piston is turned. If it's not lined up, you can grab with a pair of needle nose and turn it. Like I said, normally you have to rotate this piston and push it in at the same time, but once the electric motor is retracted, you can just push the caliper piston in like a conventional caliper. I have a homemade tool that I use for that purpose, but you can use well, you can't use a C-clamp on this because I wouldn't want to put force on the back of that plastic housing, so better to use a spreader. So there's the left side put back together. The bolt torque for these 12mm bolts here is 48 foot-pounds, and the smaller bolts, the 8mm bolts that hold the caliper to the slide pins, is 13 foot-pounds. It's not a bad idea to put some blue Loctite on both of those. Not that nature's Loctite won't work. So we've got the brake pads installed and keys still on, battery charger on it, and a finished brake pad install. This function pushes out the rear caliper pistons after replacement of the brake pads. After successful operation, perform an initialization position adjustment. Okay, start. Complete 1. Initialization position adjustment. This test performs the initial position adjustment of the rear caliper piston. Use after removal, installation, or replacement of the rear brake pads, rear calipers, or electric parking brake control module. Make sure the following conditions are met. Engine is on, ignition is on, engine off, ensure parking brake is off. That kind of sounds like the same thing it did the first time, but we did what they said. Let's just see if there's any codes. Survey says no codes. Well, we'll put the wheels back on, check the brake fluid level, and go for a road test. So I go to take the vehicle for a road test, and I hear this. Why didn't I hear that when I drove it in? I'll put a hose clamp around that. So that should take care of it. Yeah, that's good. Shield is bent too. Why? I don't know. Okay, let's take it for a road test.